Hey everyone, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you. Yeah, it should be a good conversation tonight. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We're going to have a good chat here tonight, one of our late night conversations. It should be awesome. So yeah, let's do it.
I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. So glad to be here with all of you. It is Wednesday evening. It's a little after 10. I'm here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment, drinking my lovely unnamed diet beverage. It's actually not diet beverage. It's water beverage. It was a little late for diet beverage. I would have trouble sleeping tonight, and I do have, work in the morning, etc. So I'm not drinking unnamed diet beverage this late. One of these days, we're going to have to do an early afternoon stream, and I can drink my unnamed diet beverage on here. That would be pretty cool, I think. But it's been a while, right? We tend to do late night conversations. That kind of cuts the unnamed diet beverage out of things. But we're here, and it's awesome. So I'm really glad that all of you are here with us tonight, and we're just going to have a laid-back conversation like we always do. Sometimes I get on here and I make a big speech. Sometimes I get on here and we watch videos and we react to them. That's how it works. Generally, the way we do things here, for those who may not be familiar, is that I give some opening remarks about whatever it is I want to talk about. Then from there, we do the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. I call you out as I see you. We find out who's on the other side of the camera, who it is who's watching, and it's always a very mind-blowing group of people. It's a very diverse group of people. I mean, we have people from the other side of the planet watching. We have people from Asia and Africa and South America and Europe. And I mean, it's like we're all over the world. Mostly we're in the United States because we're very U.S. themed. I'm an American. I'm here and I talk about U.S. politics quite a bit. So it tends to be U.S. focused. And so we have a mainly U.S. audience, but we have a very, very international audience. Folks from Iran are on here watching. People from all over the world watch us. And it's really, really an honor to have such an amazing international audience. And so after we do the roll call, then for the rest of the night, I answer your super chat questions. So if there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, the best thing to do is to send me a super chat now, and I will write it down. And then in the second half of our show, I will go ahead and answer that super chat question. And that's how we'll do it. So yeah, if there's something you want me to talk about, send me a super chat. Second half of the show, I answer super chat questions. That's the way it works. Quick round of business announcements. Business announcement number 1 is that the Center for Political Innovation is back and open for business. We continue to have our regular Zoom calls. We are working on a number of things now. We've got, an innovation committee going. We're doing public speaking training and public speaking workshops, and we're planning a big event. A big event is set for March 25th. Our big East Coast event is set for March 25th. Still not clear on the location, waiting for confirmation. But at this point, it's looking good. Not yet confirmed, but mark your calendars for March 25th. mark your calendars for March 25th. And if you want to be a member of the Center for Political Innovation, we always need members. Membership is, what makes an organization happen. At this point, we're up to about 75 dues-paying members. So if you would like to be a dues-paying member of the Center for Political Innovation and be part of our process of staging events and publishing books and doing what our committees do and discussing things, you're welcome to join. I might as well throw this out there because I think there might be some confusion about this. But this has always been the case. This is not a new policy. The Center for Political Innovation is a nonpartisan organization. You can be a member of the Democratic Party and be part of the Center for Political Innovation. You can be a member of the Republican Party and be part of the Center for Political Innovation. You can be a member of the Communist Party, and there are a number of members of the Communist Party that are in the Center for Political Innovation. You can be a member of the Party of Communists and be part of the Center for Political Innovation. You can be part of the PSL. You can be part of the Socialist Workers Party. You can be part of any group. And we do not demand exclusivity from our members. We just don't do that. We are not a communist vanguard party. We are an educational think tank. So if you are in another group, you are welcome to join the Center for Political Innovation. We are not partisan. We are not partisan, and we are not a party. We are an education project. We call ourselves a socialist education project. We thought maybe dropping think tank was the best thing to do. Because think tank is more of an academic thing, and we don't have a lot of college professors in the group. There's a few, but we're not really a college kind of group, right? So we dropped think tank, but we're a socialist educational project. Our function is putting on seminars and conferences about socialism around the world, and around the United States, and educating people and putting on anti-imperialist events and getting people to see the danger of war and why we need to stand with the countries of the world that are resisting U.S. imperialism, why we need a socialism with American characteristics rooted in our own traditions and culture. These kind of things are a big part of what we're about. So there you go. So I just wanted to get that out of the way that, if you're a member of another group, that's not a reason not to join because we allow dual membership. The other thing I wanted to mention, the other business announcement, the Patreon is up and running, and we're having more patrons-only streams than we used to. Now at the new place, I have a whole room just for streaming and working from home, so I don't have to battle with my wife over control of space. We got lots of space at the new apartment, so I'm doing a lot more patrons-only streams because the people who support the work that I do on Patreon are essential. We just had one on the 2nd, and we're going to be doing another one pretty soon. Haven't picked the date for the new one, but we're going to be doing one. So if you want to sign up and be a Patreon supporter, that way you get a copy of all the books that we publish. I just wanted to get that out of the way as well. Another quick thing I wanted to mention. All right, since we're just going through business announcements, here's a business announcement for you. February 19th, there's going to be a very important anti-war protest in Washington, D.C. It'll be called Rage Against the War Machine. And because it is so important, because the Libertarian Party is sponsoring it, because the People's Party of Nick Brana is sponsoring it, because Jimmy Dore is backing it, we at the Center for Political Innovation, we've decided that we are going to become official sponsors of that demonstration. We're in the process of making that happen. So if you're going to be around DC on February 19th, we will be represented to some degree or other at that march. We're trying to figure out all the details. We're thinking about having maybe a reception after the march for people that are CPI sympathizers from around the country who might be in town. But yeah, February 19th is going to be very important. It's going to be a great mobilization to stop the war, et cetera. So that's really good. The other thing I wanted to mention is that today we released yet another episode of the great podcast series I've been doing with Jyoti and Harpal Brar. And it's just a great podcast that we've been doing with Jyoti and Harpal Brar. And it's about this latest episode is about imperialist war and revolutionary defeatism and how revolutionaries respond to imperialism and war. So go and check that out. People have been watching it. It's up on the Proletarian TV of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. It's also on this YouTube channel. It's the latest episode of our podcast, so go and check that out. We always want to, it's the 13th episode that we've done. Another one coming up, right? That we love that important work. Jyoti and Harpal are very engaging, and I try to give intelligent comments as well, and it's pretty good. So go check that out. So yeah, those are the business announcements that I just wanted to get out of the way so that we're all on the same page. These business announcements are growing. That's good because it shows people are doing things. Because yeah, there we go. Because we're in serious times, and it's about damn time people start doing things. It's about damn time people start doing something. If there's ever an emergency situation, it's now. The danger of a new world war is upon us. And the global economy is screaming, and people are suffering. And if there's ever a time when it would be necessary to take action, it's now. And I wanted to start out this stream. It's early January, so we're still reflecting on the year of 2022. We're still reflecting on the year of 2022 and who did important things. I will say this, at risk of making people angry, at risk of whatever, but people know who I am. People know where I stand. I tweeted it out earlier. I will say this. The greatest heroes of 2022 by far have been the Russian military. The Russian army has been kicking ass, and they are the heroes of 2022. They have been on the battlefield every day, fighting and dying to protect the peoples of Donbass. They held off for 8 years, and now they've rolled in, and they take their job seriously, and they're taking great risk, and they're sacrificing, and they are fighting for all of us. Let me emphasize that. They are fighting for all of us, because NATO expansionism is not just a threat to Russia. It's not just a threat to the people of the Donbass regions who've been living under 8 years of shelling and bombardment. It is a threat to all humanity. And if NATO is able to get away with what it's done to the people of the eastern regions of Donbass, of the new republics that just joined the Russian Federation, if it's able to get away with that, who knows what'll be next? They destroyed Libya, a horrendous crime against humanity. They're trying to escalate things and engage in a provocation around Taiwan. And they want to turn Taiwan into the next battlefield and have Chinese people killing Chinese people so that Wall Street can sit back and laugh and rake in the profits. They're trying to provoke something on Taiwan, the North Koreans are under threat. The USA is rehearsing all-out destruction of North Korea. And the Russian military is fighting for all of us, because the U.S. imperialists, it wasn't enough for them to invade Iraq and topple the Ba'athist socialist government of Iraq and kill probably millions of people, create millions of refugees, push that country into chaos. Wasn't enough for them to occupy Afghanistan for 20 years, and the whole time they were there, keep the country unstable, keep the country in a state of chaos, have U.S. troops actually protecting the poppy fields and the heroin dealers. Wasn't enough for them to overthrow the government of Honduras in 2009 and topple the elected leader, Manuel Zelaya, and cast that country into drug gang chaos. Wasn't enough for them to foment a civil war in Syria and try to destabilize the Syrian Arab Republic, another Ba'athist Arab socialist country. That wasn't enough, right? It's never enough for them. The U.S. imperialists, they want to stay at the top. And when I say the imperialists, I'm talking about the big monopolies, the big corporations, the big banks, the oil companies, the Silicon Valley fascists, the gigantic mega corporations that sit at the top of American capitalism. They want the whole world as their captive market. And what they are doing with their wars is called degrowth. That's what these wars are. They are degrowth operations. right? You see all these people, all these fake woke synthetic leftists who say, yeah, growth is bad. I'm a degrowther. They are the very same people that support all these wars, because that's what these wars are. They are degrowth operations. Iraq used to be a very prosperous anti-imperialist country. In the 80s, late 80s, Iraq had the highest living standards in the Middle East. It had built itself up with the oil money. And then they had the Gulf War, and then they had a decade of sanctions that ruined their economy, and then the USA invaded, and now Iraq has been degrown. Now Iraqis live in utter poverty. Millions have fled the country. The whole country's been destroyed. Iraq has been degrown. Libya used to have the highest life expectancy on the African continent. It built the world's largest irrigation system, the Great Man-Made River, constructed by Muammar Gaddafi and the Islamic Socialist government, raised millions of people out of poverty, universal literacy, universal education, universal health care, universal housing. Everyone got $20,000 when they got married as their marriage bonus, with shared control of the oil profits and people's assemblies. They had built up Libya to be a prosperous country, the most prosperous country on the African continent. And now NATO bombs and a color revolution, 2011 destabilization, Obama degrew Libya. And now it's in chaos and death and destruction, and people are fleeing and drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get out. And it's a disaster. It's been degrown. Syria, right? Again, very prosperous country, Ba'athist Arab socialism, cast into civil war, instability, millions of refugees. Now Syria has been degrown. Why do they hate Russia and China? Why do they hate them? They hate them because at the beginning of the 20th century, Russia and China were dirt poor countries. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have running water. They had a very low rate of literacy. And now, as a result of socialism and socialist revolutions, Russia and China are industrial superpowers. Russia is a huge, huge exporter of oil and natural gas. Every ounce of oil and natural gas they sell is an ounce of oil and gas somebody did not buy from Wall Street. And China is a creator of a huge amount of production. I mean, they have half the world's steel is made in China in the state-controlled steel industry. They have the biggest telecommunications manufacturer in the world, Huawei Technologies. China is a huge, huge center of production. It's lifted its people out of poverty. It's eradicated extreme poverty. In 2022, they got rid of extreme poverty. They raised people out of poverty. Right? They built a very, very prosperous socialist society. Every day, another person in China becomes a millionaire. They have many billionaires in China. I mean, so many people have had their lives turned around by the central planning and the socialist government. And so the USA hates China, right? They hate China. And that's what these wars are all about. They're about degrowth. They want the world poor and impoverished as a captive market. They want the world to be poor. They want the world to be dependent, so it has to buy everything from ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, and Chevron, from General Electric, from the big corporations that run the United States. It is about keeping the world poor. Okay, I'll write it down. About keeping the world poor. So they can stay rich. That's what imperialism is all about. Gaddafi was financing infrastructure to unite all of Africa. That's what imperialism is all about. And it's always been like that. There's a great book by Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And it's all about how the European colonizers went to Africa and prevented Africa from raising their people up and prevented Africa from developing its own independent economy and held back and crippled and crushed economic development on the African continent so that Western capitalism and European colonialism could stay in control. You read about the Opium War, where the British, demanded, they forced the Chinese government to accept the importation of opium so that people could be turned into drug addicts and used for slave labor. And when the Chinese emperor said no more opium, the British, not just once, but twice, waged a war to force him to accept opium and free trade. And there's many, many examples of this. Many examples of this. When the British Empire went to India, they burned all the textile looms and forced the people to import their cloth from Britain. Mexico, they've been growing their own food since long before Christopher Columbus came. But then with NAFTA, American agribusiness put all the Mexican farmers out of business. Now Mexico imports its food from the United States. It's lost its agricultural sector. That's imperialism. Imperialism is about degrowth. And socialism is about growth. Socialism is the understanding that with the banks and the factories and the major centers of economic power under public ownership and control, growth is no longer restrained. That's what socialism is about. Socialism understands that capitalism has a built-in flaw. And that built-in flaw is best articulated in something called the coal miner's riddle. Little boy is cold. He says, "Father, why is it so cold?" Father says, "Son, it's so cold because I can't afford any coal to heat the stove." And the little boy says, "Father, why can you not afford any coal to heat the stove?" And the father says, "Because, son, I lost my job at the coal mine." And the boy says, "Father, why did you lose your job at the coal mine?" The father says, "Because there's too much coal." That's capitalism. In systems of the past, people were homeless because there wasn't enough housing. But only under capitalism are people homeless because there is too much housing. There is an abundance of housing in America. There is no shortage of housing in America. But yet we have huge homeless encampments springing up all over this country. You go to Los Angeles on Skid Row. You go to most major cities. In New York City, they have homeless encampments all over the city now. There's huge encampments of homeless people because there's too much housing. People are hungry because there is too much food. There's no shortage of food in America. We've got lots of food. And people lose their jobs and people go hungry and line up and beg for food at Catholic charities in Queens or at at food banks around the country that are just having a huge amount of demand made on them. Why? Because there's too much food, right? This is capitalism. Capitalism is the only system where abundance creates poverty. The more wealth that is created under capitalism, the more housing you have, the more food you have, the more technology advances, the better and wealthier society gets, the poorer people get. And that's because under capitalism, your only value is your ability to sell your labor power to a boss. You rent yourself out to a boss, and the boss turns your labor into profits. And the more technology advances, the fewer and fewer workers the boss needs to hire. He doesn't need as many workers, and technology advances, and he can churn out more and more products. And the rate of profit goes down because he can only make profits from human labor. And because of that, because he can only make profits from human labor, when he hires fewer people, the rate of profit that goes in, he gets from every product goes down. So he has to hire, he has to churn out more and more products. And the more technology advances under capitalism and the more wealth that is created, the poorer people get. And this is a highly irrational system. Self-driving cars. This is my favorite example. In a rational society, self-driving cars would be a great thing. All this labor that is, expended, all this human labor that goes into this thing called driving would be eliminated. No more cab drivers, no more truck drivers, and people could be more productive. They could spend their productive days doing other things, and the productivity of human labor would increase because it would no longer be necessary for people to engage in driving. But under capitalism, under our highly irrational system, self-driving cars would lead to riots in the streets. There'd be millions of people unemployed. It would be an economic disaster. it would be an absolute economic disaster. It would be an absolute economic disaster. That's not a rational society. And countries around the world that have been kept poor by imperialism, they've been degrown, they've been held in poverty by imperialism, have broken free. And they've adopted socialism to raise their people up. And Russia and China both became superpowers because they had socialist revolutions and they used socialist central planning to raise their people up out of poverty. And Cuba has had a socialist revolution and raised its people up out of poverty, created the greatest medical school in the world, according to Ban Ki-moon, has wiped out illiteracy and has done amazing things for the population. Has the highest life expectancy in the Caribbean. I mean, medical volunteers all over the world, universal housing, universal employment. Cuba has had great achievements. And there's other countries that have had great achievements because of socialism. If you look at, Nicaragua, compare Nicaragua with their socialist economy, Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. Compare that to Honduras, the free market country. Compare that to Guatemala and their free market economy, right? Nicaragua, with its socialist, centrally planned economy, has done great things for the people of Nicaragua. Socialism is a highly successful system because it eliminates the irrationality of capitalism. That's just a fact. And countries around the world that have broken out of capitalism have adopted socialism as their mechanism. And the only way capitalism can continue functioning is with degrowth. And degrowth is the essence of fascism. If you don't want to take my word for it, take somebody who was living under it. R. Palm Dutt. Fascism and social revolution. The essence of fascism is forced degrowth. Fascism is about driving down the living standards, driving down consumption in order to stabilize the capitalist system. It's about destruction of the means of production, destruction of the economy in order to keep the capitalist system rolling along. That's what fascism is. Fascism is when capitalism is in a crisis, one section of the ruling class seizes control. That's Bonapartism, but there's other forms of Bonapartism. And then after they seize control, they forcibly degrow the economy. They drive down living standards. They engage in heavy-handed state repression. They throw a lot of people in prison camps. They kill a lot of people. They create an underclass of slave laborers. They mobilize the population to destroy and kill and set the stage for war. And this is a way of saving the capitalist system when it enters a systemic crisis. And you have a systemic crisis in capitalism. You have a systemic crisis as a result of technological breakthroughs and innovation. Every great technological leap is always followed by a long-term economic crisis. My goodness. Every amazing technological leap is followed by a long-term economic crisis because of the problem of overproduction. The problem of overproduction, the problem of the tendency of the rate of profits to fall is constant, and the capitalist system is constantly struggling to deal with it. But a big technological leap leads to a long-term crisis. And that's why we had the Great Depression of the 1930s. That was in response to the technological innovations, Henry Ford, the assembly line. In the 1920s and the Roaring 20s, they would say Ford has overtaken Marx. Ford has defeated Karl Marx. Well, then the Great Depression came and we saw that that was not the case. And the First World War was the result of the fact that there were a number of economic downturns, and the imperialists had no choice but to try and save their system by conquering new markets, beating down rival imperialist powers. And capitalism responds to big technological leaps with big economic crises. And nobody understands this more than Jack Ma, by the way, the CEO of Alibaba. He made this very clear. If you listen to the speeches he's given, he's understood the relationship between technological leaps, economic downturns, and capitalism, and the rise of fascism and war. This is all something that is understood by scientific socialists. And right now, I maintain that in the aftermath, just like in the 1930s, there were big technological leaps in the 1920s. And those technological leaps then led to a long-term economic crisis in the 1930s. And that economic crisis in the 1930s led to fascism, take one. I argue that right now, the huge technological leaps that came at the end of the Cold War, the computer revolution of the 80s and the 90s, the dot-com boom, and the huge breakthroughs in technological innovation, this has led to a long-term economic crisis like the Great Depression. And this long-term economic crisis that is rooted in the economic, the problem of overproduction and the technological leaps, has spawned a new form of fascism. And it looks completely different. And its rhetoric is completely different. But none of that matters. And that's one thing that R. Palm Dutt makes abundantly clear in this book. There is no fascist ideology. There is no fascist aesthetic. They will make anything up to justify what they're doing. There is a fascist practice, but there is not a fascist ideology. Fascism is something you do. It's not something you say. If somebody put on a sheet and went around doing nice things for old people, went around protecting black people from racism, went around, uplifting women and immigrants, but they were wearing a sheet, it wouldn't matter that they were wearing a sheet, because the reason that we hate dudes in sheets is because dudes in sheets lynched black people. Dudes in sheets tortured black people. It wasn't about how they dressed. It was about what they did. The Ku Klux Klan is hated because of what they did, not because of how they dressed, right? A lot of kids are ghosts for Halloween and dressed like, the same way the Ku Klux Klan is. Right? They made a joke about that on South Park years ago. But the problem with fascists isn't how they talk. The problem with fascists isn't how they speak. It's not their rhetoric. It's what they do. Fascism is a practice. It is not an ideology. And fascism has a different ideology everywhere it goes. In Mussolini's Italy, there was a lot of futurism in fascism. In Mussolini's Italy, they were all about science fiction, and they were all about speed and progress and all of that. But if you look at what they actually did, they stabilized the economy with degrowth. They drove huge sections of the population into slave labor conditions. They broke the labor movement. Fascism in Italy was very, very much fascism. Nazi Germany, they were all about knights and castles and Wagner and anti-Semitism and Germanic paganism and all this stuff. But what did they do? They put a huge chunk of the population into prison camps. It's actually quite interesting. I'm working on, this is a concept I've been thinking about all day because I'm writing a book. How did the Nazis reboot the German economy? Right? 1933, Hitler came to power. He was named chancellor. A few months later, the Reichstag building got burned. Got lit on fire. They blamed the communists for it. So they arrested all the communist members of parliament. And after the members of parliament that were communists were arrested, at that point, the Nazis had a super majority and set up a totalitarian state. So what did they do to stabilize the German economy? Well, the first thing that they did is they rounded up all the communists, all the leaders of the Communist Party, and they put them in prison camps. All the leaders of the Social Democratic Party, they rounded them up, put them in prison camps. And, all the leaders of the labor unions, they rounded them up and put them in prison camps. And so all those people were no longer looking for jobs. They were now slave laborers. And they started using those people as slave laborers and giving them to corporations. Private corporations got this free slave labor of political prisoners, political dissidents, who were there free slave laborers. And that was a stimulus on the economy. All of a sudden, corporations got all this free labor from prisoners. On top of that, a lot of people got jobs as guards for the prison camps. And then, and this is interesting, I didn't realize this, the Nazis launched a campaign against women working. Did you know this? The Nazis launched a campaign against women working. They said that women working should be ashamed of themselves. They're taking a job away from a man. And they instituted a marriage bonus. So if you got married, you got a big, financial bonus, like a tax bonus, like this, you got a real big incentive. And so they drove women out of the workforce. So all of a sudden women were no longer working in industry, right? Because if it was like a campaign, like there was just this huge stigma created around the idea of women working, and there was a marriage bonus to encourage people to get married. And so because of that, women were no longer looking for jobs. Then they built these highways called the Autobahns that stretched across Germany, the Autobahns. And then they started the MEFO Corporation, right? The Metallurgical Research Company, which was a company where they facilitated, foreign investment in rearming the country. And they set up a military industrial complex, and they started rearming the country and militarizing Germany. And they ripped up the Versailles Treaty that said they couldn't have an army. And then they started doing all of that. And by doing all of those things, by then canceling, by canceling the debts that they owed to German American banks, they got the economy of Germany rolling again. All of it was basically degrowth. And then 1939, it only worked for so long. In 1939, the German economy was crashing again. It only worked for so long. It was a temporary measure. Pretty soon they had the exact same problem. They built all these tanks and bombs and weapons, and they had a whole bunch of airplanes and bombs and tanks sitting around. They had a whole bunch of people in prison camps, and the economy, they still wasn't growing. They still had the same problem. So they launched the Second World War to stabilize their economy. And what did they do during the Second World War? When they took over a country, they got slaves from all of those countries. Did you know this? That Germany was filled with slaves, right? That they would take over a country, they'd invade Poland, and then they'd take a bunch of Poles and take them back to Germany and use them as slave laborers, right? And that the way the German economy functioned during the Second World War is there were tons and tons of slave laborers. They had all these factories full of slave laborers. And they would depopulate the areas. They would just go and clear out populations and depopulate the areas. And that Nazism was all about driving down living standards, rolling back economic development to save capitalism. Wrote it down. Thank you very much. And Nazi Germany's economy was about degrowth, and it was an attempt to stabilize capitalism, and it was a failed attempt. It didn't work, and ultimately it led to a horrendous war. And World War II destroyed every major city in Western Europe. Every major city. London was destroyed. Berlin was destroyed. Paris was destroyed. Every major city was destroyed during that war. Every single one. And because of that, because every major city was destroyed in that war, right? At that point, the problem of overproduction was resolved, and mass destruction, mass death in China, mass death in Japan, mass death on the Korean Peninsula, it all led to an attempt to, it led to rebooting the U.S. economy. And then after World War II, we had a long period of economic growth, the post-World War II economic expansion. That's what we had. The post-World War II economic expansion. And so when we talk about fascism, how fascism, the essence of it is economic. It is about degrowth. It is about driving down living standards, reducing consumption in order to stabilize capitalism, drive the women out of the workforce, create an underclass of slave laborers, spend lots of money on tanks and bombs and weapons and preparing for war, have a big war so you can take people from countries as slave laborers. That's capitalism. That is the essence of fascism. Fascism is capitalism in decay. It is degrowth to save capitalism. At this point, it is very, very, very clear that we are living during the rise of fascism 2.0. And fascism 2.0 has a very different values system than the original fascism. But then again, fascism was never the same, right? I mean, Mussolini's Italy, they loved Jews. Nazi Germany, they hated Jews, right? Franco's Spain, fascism is different everywhere. Okay, so let's be clear about that. Fascism does not look the same everywhere, but the economics are the same. Stabilizing capitalism with heavy-handed degrowth. We are living in a period where the fascism that's emerging is emerging under the banner of wokeism. And we just need to come to terms with that. Now, that doesn't mean it will always be that way, okay? And it could change. But the fascism that we are living in is ironically calling itself anti-fascism. But the essence of it is the same. They want to stabilize the global capitalist economy with degrowth. That's what they want. They want to stabilize the capitalist economy by imposing heavy-handed controls and driving down living standards. They openly say this. They write whole books about this. Less is more. This is what they want to do. They do not make any bones about it. They want the world to be poorer. They want production to go down. They want to decrease the means of production. They want to keep big sections of the world in poverty, all to save capitalism. And they think the problem with capitalism is that it creates growth, which is not the problem with capitalism. If you read Marx, the problem of overproduction, the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, the problem with capitalism is that capitalism holds back growth. But they don't think that. They think the problem with capitalism is that it creates growth, and that growth is bad, and they're going to create a heavy-handed state that mobilizes the population to carry out degrowth. And they have actually laid out for us pretty clearly what their fascist dystopia will look like. And I am not the only person who can see this. The whole country can practically see this. I mean, you listen to any conservative, they know what they're looking at here. The conservatives know that the government is run by a group of very, very rich people who want to make everyone else poor, who want to drive down the economy, right? When you read what conservatives and others say about the Great Reset, they know what's going on. The lower level capitalists know very well what's going on. There's a group of capitalists, the richest of the rich, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and the Rockefellers and the DuPonts and the Carnegies. And those folks have decided that to save capitalism, we're going to have a great reset and we're going to drive down living standards. And we see there's little pieces of the high-tech dark ages that they want to impose that are being negotiated right now. All right? There's not a clear fascist alliance yet. And it took a long time before Germany was ready to accept fascism. It took a long time. It's very expensive, and a lot of capitalists are going to not go along with it. And that Hitler put a lot of capitalists in prison in order to do fascism, right? That Bonapartism, where one section of the ruling class takes power and uses the state to try and stabilize capitalism. In order to pull that off, you have to, there has to be a lot of bloodshed within the ranks of the ruling class. They've got no problem imprisoning workers, suppressing working class movements. But when they have to start suppressing each other, that's very dangerous. And because of that, it takes a long time. But we're starting to see the blueprint be laid out for their vision of a world where they impose degrowth to save capitalism. And they have pretty clearly spelled out various aspects of it. The first thing is that they absolutely want to reduce the living standards of the population. Everyone in the United States must get poorer. And the fact that we have a generation of young people stuck in low-wage, short-term service sector jobs, living with their parents, oh no, that's not enough. That's not enough. They want everyone to be poorer. And part of making everyone poorer is this belief that the problem is that Americans have had life too good. Ilhan Omar, I will read you what she tweeted out. I have it here because I've been working on the book all day. I will read you what Ilhan Omar tweeted out. Well, the Washington Post revealed that participants in Donald Trump's, protest and Capitol riot on January 6th, that many of the participants in those protests had suffered economic hardships, and that was one of their motivations. This is what Ilhan Omar said. It's not economic anxiety. It's anxiety over losing status and power that's fueling right-wing extremism. There is a white supremacy radicalism in our society, and we can't afford to dismiss or normalize it. So what Ilhan Omar is saying is that if working class people in Ohio and Minnesota and Pennsylvania are mad about losing their jobs, they're racist. That's what she said. If you're mad about losing your job, you're mad about losing your home, you're racist because you are losing your status and power and your white supremacy. You're losing your white privilege. So all the people in your town and your community who lost their jobs, Ilhan Omar says, no, that's not capitalism. That's not a problem of capitalism. That's good. They're losing their white privilege. That's what they think. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. That's what these people believe. They believe that if working class people are mad about losing their jobs, mad about losing their homes, and they're white, they're racist. That's what they believe. And so if having a job, having a home, being able to feed your kids is racist, is white privilege, well, then it makes sense that we ought to get rid of it for millions of people because them having it is racist. So that's like one of the first things. We have to have a mass reduction of living standards because the problem with racism isn't that black and brown people are poor. That's not the problem with racism. Oh, no. The problem isn't that black and brown people have less and we need to raise them up while we raise up everybody. No. The problem is that white people have it too good. So we need to impoverish and drive down the living standards of the white middle class of America. And anyone who would get in the way of that, any workers who would occupy their factories and demand that they not close, anyone who would go out and protest and demand food stamps, anyone like Jimmy Dore who demands, force the vote, right, and wants to demand Medicare for all, they're Nazis. They're racist because white people have it too good and they deserve to be poor. And that in order to degrow and get rid of all the privilege, we have to drive down living standards. That's the first plank in the fascist platform, right? We have to drive down living standards. We have to reduce consumption, drive everyone into poverty, and anyone who disagrees is racist. And you don't have to be white to be a racist. Did you know that? You can be Asian and racist. They really don't like Asians, by the way. They really hate Asians, right? Asians, because the Asian small business owners, right? The Korean store owner who works really, really hard and has that store. Oh, they hate the Korean store owner, and black people who voted for Trump in bigger numbers than they've ever voted for any Republican. Oh, they're all racist too. I don't know how that works, but anyone who doesn't want to see their community get poorer is racist. So that's the first plank. Second plank in their platform. This is an interesting one. They want to completely eliminate the small businesses. Right? Just completely roll over them. Right? Small businesses, can't have that, right? Just put them all out of business, right? They want to secure the monopoly of big corporations, Walmart, Amazon, companies like that, because those big corporations are woke. They have pride flags and Black Lives Matter flags, and they're woke. But in order to create ultra monopolies and just eliminate the small business owner, in order to do that, these big corporations that they give a monopoly to, they're all going to become cooperatives, right? That's what socialism is. It has nothing to do with getting rid of the rule of profits. It's just about being a cooperative. They're going to create cooperatives. So that means that you will go to work at Amazon and you will bust your ass delivering packages for Jeff Bezos, and you will live in poverty. And at the end of the week, you won't even know how much you're going to get paid. Why? Because you won't get a wage. You'll get a stock dividend because you're a co-owner, right? And if Amazon stock goes down, well, you get a lower stock dividend. I guess we should all work harder since we're co-owners, right? And of course, Jeff Bezos will still have millions of dollars, and the executives will still be making millions. And of course, the workers will still get paid shit, but their ability to pay the workers shit will be even bigger and even more because they're going to be co-owners. And in fact, they'll probably set up a union that'll be part of their co-ownership, but it won't be a real union. No. It'll be a place that you go and sit with the other workers to talk about how you can help the degrowth agenda. They did this. This is exactly, by the way, this is the one thing about fascism that echoes. This is exactly what they did in Mussolini's Italy. This is exactly what they did in Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany, they outlawed all the real unions. They outlawed strikes. And then they like made a person from the workers from the shop floor. They put him in a room with the CEO and with a representative of the Nazi party, and they called it a corporate, right? And the idea was, wow, you now have representation because this company is run by a corporation or a corporate, right? Or a syndicate. And we've got a representative of the Nazi party, we've got a representative of the workers, and we've got the owner, and you all work together for the good of the nation. And all the workers in Germany, they were all technically part of a union called the German Labor Front. But the German Labor Front never went on strike. The German Labor Front was a place they went to and got to hear speeches about why they better work hard for the good of the fatherland and why they better accept lower wages and why they better report on their coworkers who had criminal thoughts. And that's what they're going to do, right? They're going to make us all co-owners. We're all going to work for mega corporations like Amazon and Walmart and Microsoft. And, that's who we'll be working for, Google, right? And we're all going to be co-owners, and we're all going to have a union where we go and get lectured about how we need to all get paid less and how we need to work harder for the good of Mother Nature and the good of social justice. And this is their scheme, right? And again, they have made it clear, if you believe in a centrally planned economy, you're a Nazi and you need to be reported. So that's the second thing, is this what they call corporate statism, which is not socialism because profits are still in command, but it's this in Spain, look it up. They called it national syndicalism. It's the same kind of thing. It's this, they keep profits in command, but they pretend the workers are co-owners somehow, and they create a fake union that's about pushing the degrowth ideology. That's the second plank. The third thing that they're going to do is it's going to be much different than Nazi Germany. This is very different than Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, because in fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, if you disagreed with the government, if you were critical of the government, you were in the Communist Party or whatever, they rounded you up and put you in a prison camp. Well, that doesn't really work so well, right? Putting people in camps has kind of gotten a bad name because of some certain historical events I could mention, so they can't really do that. So instead, right? And this is classic, right? Instead, they're just going to cancel you. They just boycott you. If you have a criminal thought, if you question the great degrowth agenda, if you question the mighty social justice agenda, the wokeism, you lose your job. And then, your apartment, you got to lose your apartment. Your landlord can't rent to a racist or a sexist or a homophobe. And then the homeless shelter, they can't, house you because then they'd be housing and providing support to racists. And basically anyone who questions the government or the status quo will be homeless on the street. Right. And that's what they'll do. Society will boycott you. Right. It's the clever thing. Right. So now the whole thing is now, parents, you're not supposed to punish your children. Did you know that? You can't punish your children. Your children misbehave. You just ignore them. Right. You just withdraw from them. And that's what will happen. If you disagree, if you don't support the degrowth agenda, if you want people to have more, why then your company fires you. And, stores, you can't shop at stores anymore because they can't do business with you, and they cancel you. And they keep a big directory of every person who's had a criminal thought or done anything that goes against the party line, against the ruling party line. And they just boycott you. They just cancel you. They just boycott you if you disagree. And that's the third thing they're going to do. And the fourth thing they're going to do is that while we're all working in poverty wages for Amazon or Walmart or these giant corporations, and while we pretend we're co-owners of the company, and while we're all getting poorer and told that we should get poorer, and while we're all, living in fear of being canceled because if we say anything wrong, society will just boycott us. They're not going to throw us in jail, not going to punish us, but then they can't do business with us. Everyone needs to boycott anyone who thinks wrong. Then, to top it all off, everyone will be constantly mandated to become a regime change activist around the world. And part of showing that you're virtuous and part of not getting canceled is you'll be constantly outdoing your coworkers and outdoing your friends and neighbors and how much you support overthrowing some socialist and anti-imperialist government around the world. And anybody who questions the U.S. foreign policy will be in danger, and it will be your assignment. Everyone will be assigned in their workplaces, in their schools, everywhere, everyone will be assigned. Everyone will be assigned, to constantly be doing work to, support the foreign policy of the United States. It'll be your obligation to prove, like banishment in feudal times. Yeah. It'll be your obligation to prove your morality by constantly showing how much you support wars. You will be constantly doing off the clock activism to raise awareness about the need to overthrow the Russian government, overthrow the Chinese government, overthrow the Cuban government. This is the high-tech dark ages that they want. This is the monopoly capitalist authoritarian illiberal state that they seek to create. It is a degrowth, high-tech dark ages that they want to create. It is a low-wage police state that they want to create. And that's what they want to do. And it will be done in the name of socialism, because you're going to be a co-owner. It'll be done in the name of social justice. It'll be done in the name of saving the environment. It'll be done in the name of spreading freedom and human rights around the world. This is the dark ages that they have envisioned, and they are rolling it out right now. And they don't all agree with each other. Elon Musk, he doesn't agree about it, and he's been exposing some of the way Twitter has been used for this. And, there are disagreements among them, and they don't have a solid alliance to pull this off. But it's pretty clear that among the richest of the rich, this is their vision to save capitalism, is to create a weird, technocracy, a techno-feudalism, if you will, a weird attempt to roll back the wheels of history and degrow the population. And this is what they're doing. And a lot of it is brainwashing with social media and television, etc. And this is what they want to do. And that's the bad news. But the good news is this, folks. The good news is that humanity is not going to take it, because the overwhelming majority of humanity would see their living standards go down in this high-tech dark ages. Small business owners don't want to be crushed and put out of business. Workers want higher wages, not lower wages. People want freedom of speech and the right to say what they think and not be afraid of getting canceled. And the anti-wokeness, the anti-woke, the Ron DeSantis stuff, that's all a real sentiment among the population. Everyone is tired of the pronoun police. Everyone is tired of the cancel army, people are sick and tired of it. People are sick and tired of being afraid to say what they think. People are sick and tired of having the latest social justice crusade rammed down their throat. People are sick and tired of being told that they should be poorer and that wanting a better life for their kids and their family is somehow racist or sexist. People are sick of this. The overwhelming majority of the United States is sick of this. The overwhelming majority of the world is sick of this. Africa is sick of this. They don't want it. They're not going along with the war against Ukraine. They hate it, right? They love China. They love Russia. The African continent has huge, huge support for Russia and China in Africa. Latin America is not going along with this. And the bulk of the U.S. population isn't going along with this. Even though they've used, your phone and your internet to shove this down your throats, people don't want to hear it. However, they need a real solution. And the only way you can fight this high-tech dark ages that's unfolding before us, the only way you can fight the low-wage police state, the only way you can fight it is with socialism. Because if you don't have real socialism, if you can't explain that the problem is not caused by growth, it's caused by capitalism and the problem of overproduction and the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, if you can't explain that, you don't have a mechanism to fight back against these people. If you can't explain why China has lifted millions of people out of poverty and why socialism is the way to make people wealthier and the way to overcome the problems of capitalism and the irrationality of capitalism, if you can't explain that, then you don't have any ground to stand on. And China and Russia are the center of the global movement of resistance to this high-tech dark ages. And they are the center of resistance. Just like during the 1930s, the Communist International, they built the United Front Against Fascism, and they were at the center of the fight to defeat Hitler and the fight to defeat fascism. Nowadays, Russia and China are at the center of the global resistance against woke fascism. And the fight is going to be most intense here in the United States and in Western Europe, because that's where the wokeism is coming out of, because it is an attempt to save the Atlanticist international system. So our fight is ahead of us. Our fight is ahead of us, and we've got a lot of work to do. But this is the time we are living in. And honestly, I think it's going to be the American military and the military-industrial complex that is going to be the basis of the resistance in the United States to wokeism. And that sounds really weird, right? And it's going to be bizarre because the military-industrial complex, we're used to them being the bad guys and the Ford Foundation and the Rockefellers being the good guys. That's how it was during the Cold War. The Ford Foundation and the Rockefellers, they wanted to negotiate. They wanted to negotiate with the socialist countries, whereas the military-industrial complex, they wanted war in Vietnam and stuff like that. But now we're living in a very different time where the U.S. economy is crashing and burning, and where the most powerful capitalists are pushing degrowth. Meanwhile, the capitalists on the lower level who want to keep growing are having more and more of a positive opinion of Russia and China. Tulsi Gabbard comes out of the military, right? McGregor, he comes out of the military. Ron Paul got a huge amount of support, and that it is in the economic interest of the lower level capitalists to have a relationship with Russia and China. And it is in the interest of the higher level capitalists to crush them and degrow the economy so they can stay at the top. And the lower level American capitalists who are tied in with the military industrial complex are ultimately the ones who are going to have to align with the labor movement and the workers and the global anti-imperialist movement. So in a weird way, we need to look to the military, the U.S. military. We need to start figuring out how we can make overtures to the U.S. military, because as weird as it sounds, and as much as it doesn't make any sense, and it seems completely contrary to everything we know, the U.S. military is where there's going to be the strongest resistance to woke fascism. And we also need to be tapping in to the American dream, because the American dream, the belief that you can work hard, you can achieve your dreams, that is so contrary to the woke pessimism that they're spreading everywhere, right? I mean, the belief of the American, work hard and, the American dream, that is something we got to tap into. Furthermore, Christianity and religion, these are things that make people resist wokeism. These are things that give people a reason to live and a purpose higher than themselves. And they don't lead to the postmodernism and the pessimism and the hopelessness that dominates the society. Okay. So we really are in a weird historical moment. We're in a very, very weird historical moment where left is right, up is down, backwards is forwards. Everything is confusing. Everything is confusing. But we're in a weird period where the only hope for defeating their high-tech dark ages is going to be coming from sentiments that are already there among the population. Americans want more than they already have. Americans, a lot of them have a belief in Christianity, and as confused and incorrect their interpretation of it may be, they have at least a belief that compassion is good and that kindness is a good thing, and that and the military industrial complex right now, it's not in a good spot. The military is in a bad spot right now, but there is a layer within the military that is starting to get what's going on, and the lower level capitalists are very confused. But these things are not developing quickly. These are things that are going to happen. It's going to take a long time for them to develop. It's going to take quite a long time for things to develop, right? I'm pointing to the very beginning of some trends that are going to play out. It's going to take a long time before these trends fully play out. But I'm just telling you that we're in a weird period where liberalism is decaying into woke fascism. Liberalism is decaying into woke fascism. Liberalism is decaying into woke fascism. And that is creating a situation, as living standards are dropping, that we can become the champions of the American people, and that there's one form of illiberalism that has the power to defeat the high-tech dark ages. There's only one form of illiberalism that can stand up to the high-tech dark ages, and that is socialism, and that is Marxism. And that's the only type of illiberalism that can stand a chance against the impending liberal menace. So we are in a very, very, very weird period right now. But if the situation changes in 24 hours, the tactics must also change. And right now, it is essential. It is essential that we spread the message that with socialism and with a centrally planned economy, growth could surge forward once again. Now, the problem is not overpopulation. The problem is not overconsumption. The problem is capitalism. That we need a centrally planned economy. We need socialism with American characteristics. And that if you really love your country, and if you really follow the teachings of Jesus, you should reject the system that puts profits over people. You should reject the idea that Russia and China and Venezuela and Iran are our enemies. And instead, you should love your fellow human beings, and you should demand a society that enables them to flourish and grow and get access to education and schools and healthcare. And, this is the message we need to get out there. This is the message we need to get out there. We're living in a very, very odd period. But all the old rules from the Cold War need to be chucked because we're living in a very, very odd period. And what Nick Brana is doing, what the People's Party is doing, what Jimmy Dore is doing, what Tulsi Gabbard is doing, this is where we should be paying attention. And there should be credit given where credit is due, right? Lyndon LaRouche was really ahead of his time. And a lot of the things that Lyndon LaRouche said weren't as true when he wrote them as they are today. Lyndon LaRouche saw the degrowth stuff coming a mile away. And things were much more confusing in Lyndon LaRouche's time because the left was still preaching Marxism. It was still preaching public ownership of the means of production. It was still preaching growth. It was still aligned with socialist countries. And so Lyndon LaRouche's message often came out very convoluted and confusing. And a lot of what Lyndon LaRouche did and said in his lifetime, I don't agree with. But he got this right. And if you read Dialectical Economy, right, or you read, There Are No Limits to Growth, like, these books are so much more true today than they are when Lyndon LaRouche wrote them. He was a visionary who understood this. And that's why his people right now are the most pro-Russia and pro-China people you can find. No one is more supportive of China and Russia than the LaRouche people are. Why is that? Because they get it. Because what LaRouche saw, that there was this faction in the ruling class, the Eastern establishment, that was pushing degrowth, that they've taken control, and that Russia and China are now centers of growth and anti-imperialism, and that LaRouche's overall thesis, which was that the main danger was coming from what he called the British Empire, the Anglo-American establishment, the New England circles of wealth and power. That's what Lyndon LaRouche spent his life arguing. And based on that, he did a lot of things that maybe were not the right thing to do. I don't know. I wasn't there. But based on that was Lyndon LaRouche's thesis. That's what he spent his life focusing on, was the idea that growth is good and that there is a faction in the ruling class that funds what was being called the New Left. And they were doing it with the CIA, with the Congress for Cultural Freedom, and that essentially, he was correct. And it's much more clear. It's much more clear that he was correct about this now than it was in his lifetime. And he was very forthcoming. And that's why I respect Lyndon LaRouche. And I don't agree with Lyndon LaRouche, and I'm not a member of his organization. And, he ultimately did repudiate Marxism completely, and they have their own view. And, I don't agree with them on everything. I still listen to rock music. I wake up every day and go to sleep with classical music, but I don't listen to rock music all the time. I don't listen to classical music all day long like they do. And I could never be a member of their group because I don't fully agree with them, and I never will. But this is what LaRouche was right about. Okay. And this is why he deserves credit. And this is why Diane Sare was such a fundamental candidate. And she was so key in the last election as an anti-imperialist voice. Is the LaRouche people, this was something that Lyndon LaRouche understood. And, sometimes, if you know something, if you become aware of something that is not obvious, and the world denies it, it can drive you mad. It can drive you up the wall. If you know something that's true, that the world refuses to acknowledge, it can be extremely frustrating. And it seems to me that what LaRouche knew was that in the long term, the Eastern establishment, the Anglo-American establishment, the ultra-rich, the Malthusians, the Rockefellers were the most dangerous faction of the ruling class. And he knew that. And that because the Soviet Union oriented its followers to focus on opposing the military-industrial complex, and because the lower-level capitalists had been the John Birch Society and the McCarthyists, there was just an inability to understand that on the part of the left, and it drove Lyndon LaRouche wild. And he ultimately, he made enemies out of most of the left, and they didn't like him, and he didn't like them. And I mean, I'm not here to tell you Lyndon LaRouche was right about everything, because he wasn't. But this is what he realized. This was the truth that he pointed to in all of his writing and all of his. I've read enough of his stuff and listened to enough of his lectures to understand this is what Lyndon LaRouche spent his life saying, is that there is an oligarchical group of people at the top who don't believe in economic growth, who believe human beings are fundamentally animals, who want to stop technological progress, and they are the richest of the rich, and they are the main danger. And that's what he spent his life fighting against and aligning with different forces against and trying to maneuver against. That's what Lyndon LaRouche spent his life doing. And I can respect that. I can respect Lyndon LaRouche for that. So I'll give him credit for that. But, I draw from other thinkers as well. But I might as well give credit where credit is due, and he said a lot of things over the years, and don't say I'm a LaRoucheist. I'm not a LaRoucheist, right? I don't agree with him on a lot of things. So I just want to give credit where credit is due. That is one thing he was right about. And often there are great thinkers throughout history who are right about some things, but not all things, right? And I think that that's a totally legit thing, and that there are many, many great thinkers throughout history that are right on one point, but wrong on other points. And that sometimes, again, if you can see something that's true, and no one else will acknowledge it, that can become your focus, and you may not see other things as clearly as you might want to. But I might want to throw that out there. And that's what I just told you all. That's my worldview, right? And I'm writing a new book that is very difficult to write because I've done so much research on all of this, on different divisions in the ruling class, different intelligence operations, different, I've spent a long time doing a lot of research. And this book I'm writing, it's like, the bibliography is going to be very long, and it's a lot of work. I'm sitting down with my laptop, and it's not easy. And, I'm rewriting every chapter of it multiple times, and it's not easy. But when this book is finally finished, this book will be, this book will lay out a worldview that is certainly unique. So I just wanted to share that all with you. And those are my opening remarks for tonight. I've got a lot of super chats to answer, but keep them rolling in. Keep them rolling in. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? All right. We got Nate in Chicago. St. David's, Bermuda, Hugo from the Netherlands. We got Temple City, California. We got Karen Mendes from Germany. We got Hugo from the Netherlands. We got Rupert from England. We got Ryan in Kansas City. Philippe in Texas. Yonatan Mahari. Ryan in Kansas City. Hugo from the Netherlands. Jeff from Arizona. In Sydney at the moment. George in Sydney. Jeff in Grand City, Arizona. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Abel Malcolm in Milwaukee. Very, very, very good. Kieran from San Diego. Carolyn and Dario from Brooklyn. Nico in San Diego. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Los Angeles County. Ryan in Oakland. Jaref from Virginia. Jaref. Oakland. I guess I'm watching. Caleb Maupin in New York, USA. Wow. Are you writing to me from the future? Bum, bum, bum. Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Missouri, Patch in snowy Arizona, Anthony in Detroit, James from Ontario, London. John McCarthy in Chicago. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you enjoyed the opening remarks. Lawrence, Massachusetts. David Rennie in Hamilton, Ontario. Very, very good. Very, very good. Very, 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 very good. Is the book that we're talking about the one that you started writing about the New Left? Okay. Is the book that you're talking about the one that you started writing of the New Left? There we go. All right. So now we're going to start answering super chats, but keep them rolling in, folks. I'm here in the second half of the show to answer your super chats. First question. My thoughts on Republicans forcing the vote with the speaker. Yeah, I mean, it shows that's one thing about the Republican Party. They have always fought harder and fought dirtier than the Democrats. Generally, what they fight harder and dirtier for are things I don't agree with. Like, they don't want to have more protections for labor unions. They don't want to increase the minimum wage. They want, to deregulate and privatize and sell things off to sell state assets off the highest bidder. They believe in neoliberal economics and social conservatism and things that I'm generally not too keen on. However, many people have pointed out that the Republicans fight dirty. They fight for what they believe in, right? They tend to believe in things. I've often said that the two parties in the United States, they both have their weaknesses. And the weakness of the Democratic Party is that they are corrupt and they say things they don't really believe, right? And that's the weakness of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the party of the corrupt urban political machines. It is very nepotistic. There's a pecking order in the Democratic Party. The Pelosi crime family runs it in San Francisco, and you got Tammany Hall in New York, and you got the Rizzo machine in Philadelphia, and the Democratic Party, the urban political machines, are notoriously corrupt, right? And they say a lot of leftist sounding stuff, and they don't deliver. They're too busy. They take care of their constituents. They take care of the people who pay them and bribe them, and they do the bidding of certain people, but they're notoriously corrupt. The Republican Party, on the other hand, their weakness is that they're extremists. Generally, the Republican Party are right-wing extremists, and they believe what they're saying, but their views are nutty. I mean, they think, that there would be universal employment if we just outlawed the minimum wage. They think that, at one point, in the 60s, a lot of Republicans thought the drinking water of the country was being poisoned by communist mind control, and that the Republican Party has often been an extremist party, a party of right-wing extremists, but they believe in what they're saying. They're much more sincere. It's a party that, it's not urban folks who are voting for them. It's smaller towns, rural areas where people expect a level of honesty from people that they elect, and there's much more of an intimate relationship, not as many competing constituencies and demographics, and that Republicans often, they mean what they say. What they say is so extreme that they lose people historically, right? And that there's been a lot of times where, the Republicans lose out because they're just too extreme. Whereas the Democrats, they never lose out because they're too extreme. The Democrats lose out because no one believes them, because they come across as insincere and phony. And so, yeah, the Republican Party, they're actually fighting for their speaker, right? And, the squad are phony. They're completely phony. And they are completely phony. AOC and Ilhan Omar and all of them. And when Jimmy Dore said force the vote, they called him a Nazi for it. Whereas the Republican Party, they really believe what they're saying. Unfortunately, other than what, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she said some good stuff about Ukraine. And there's been some other, like Rand Paul has said some good stuff on foreign policy. But for the most part, what Republicans believe is crap. I mean, they believe in free markets, unregulated capitalism. You got people like Marco Rubio that are just obsessive, foreign policy hawks. They want to overthrow every anti-imperialist state, and they're really pro-Israel. And the Republican Party, what they believe largely sucks, but they believe it, right? And honestly, we may be entering a period, and I predicted this for a long time, where it seems like the Democratic Party is just becoming the party of the establishment. The neocons are moving into the Democratic Party, and because of MAGA and Trump, the Republican Party, and again, these are things that will take a long time. And what I said about the military-industrial complex playing a good role, they don't play a good role now. I'm saying that they may eventually they're probably eventually going to play a good role, eventually, in the long term. It'll take a long time for things to get to that point, but they're playing a very negative role now. They're making hand over foot money over the Ukraine stuff. Don't get me wrong. But the Republican Party is going to probably turn into a catch-all populist party, where there are populists of the left and populists of the right. And increasingly, the Democrats accuse anyone who doesn't agree with wokeism. You can be as left-wing, you can be to the left of Stalin, you can be the most left-wing person ever, and they will call you a Nazi and a fascist if you don't agree with them, right? All Jimmy Dore did is demand that they prove they actually do believe in Medicare for all, and they called him a Nazi for that. They're like, the Democratic Party says you're either with us or against us. And because of that, there's a good chance that in the long term, it may take a while, the Republicans may just turn into a catch-all populist party. That would be very interesting to see. That would be very, very interesting to see. All right, the Nick Brana accusation. I don't believe it. I looked into it, and I like Nick Brana. He's a good guy. And, I listened to the accusation, and I think it's bullshit. And, I don't want to go into too much detail about this because I'm not his lawyer and I'm not here to litigate his case. But, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And the people in his party, they don't buy it either. They did a thorough investigation. They didn't buy it. And, I'm not going to say too much more about it. It's not my place, but I don't buy it. I like Nick Brana. I think he's a good guy. I don't believe the allegations that were made against him. And I see how this is the game this is what they do to everybody, right? Look, everybody, they have a dossier on everybody. Did you notice? If you do what I do, if you're an outspoken anti-imperialist, there will develop a dossier about you. Eventually, they'll come up with, you're a this and you're a that, and they'll find anything. And name one person with the views that I have that they don't have a dossier on. And they're probably sitting there, that's because the only people who support Russia are evil. Well, I don't think that's true. Everybody who's an anti-imperialist and does the kind of work that I do, speaks up against the wars, defends Russia and Ukraine, is anybody who does that, they develop a dossier on you. And you are, first I was a Nazi because I met with Dugin, who's not a Nazi. That doesn't make any sense. And then I was this, and then I was that, and then next, and now I'm this and I'm that, and and it's ridiculous. And it's really interesting what they do, because they will take like things that are slightly true and they will make them things that they are not. And I was listening to one of these, there's some of these people I don't even want to draw attention to them to, because they don't have as big of audiences as some of these people. And all they do on their channels is just react to other people and attack them. But I was watching this thing, and they claimed that I forced people to live in poverty, and I forced all of them to do sexual things with me. That is not what's alleged. That was never alleged against me. That is not what's alleged, right? And it's like, and that's the thing, right? Like, I didn't force anyone to do anything, right? I did not force anyone to do anything. And only one thing ever happened with anybody, and it was completely consensual, and it happened after they moved out of the housing. And the person, took me out. I took this person out to dinner over and over and over again. And they repeatedly said to me, hey, I really need money. Can you do this thing? And I did something I shouldn't have done. And it happened with one person. But according to, it's just said with common knowledge that I forced a bunch of people into poverty. I forced a bunch of people into poverty, and I forced them into poverty, and I forced them all to do sexual things with me. That is not what's alleged at all. And if I did that, I would be in prison right now for false imprisonment. If I forced people to live somewhere, I didn't force anyone to live anywhere. I didn't force anyone to live anywhere. I didn't force anyone to do anything, right? These are all legal adults, folks. I didn't force anyone to do anything. And on top of that, none of the people that were living in the housing did anything sexual with me while they were living in the housing. And only one person ever did anything sexual with me. But No, this person just says on their stream, no, Caleb forced a whole bunch of people to live with him and forced them to all do sex acts on him. That is not, like, that's the most ridiculous. Like, no one alleges that. Not a single person has ever made that allegation against me. I'm accused of being a rapist, a pedophile. I mean, I don't know how I'm a rapist. I'm not accused of, I'm not going to get too explicit here, but it's like, I didn't have sex with anybody. So, rape is unconsensual sex. I didn't have sex with anybody, right? Pedophile. There's no one under 18 involved in this anywhere. There's no one under 18 is involved in this story anywhere. But somehow these people just tweet this out that I'm a rapist, I'm a pedophile, I've even seen I'm a sex offender. That's interesting. Well, in order for me to be a sex offender, one, I would have to be charged with a crime. Never been charged with a crime. Two, I'd have to be convicted of the crime. Three, I would have to then be entered in the sex offender registry. I have not been any of those three things. But none of this matters to these people. And they just say it because I'm an anti-imperialist, because of the work that I do, right? And if you can't wrap your mind around this, that Nick Brana doing the work that he does, they were eventually going to call him something, right? He was already, just the fact that he's not a Democrat means he's a neo-Nazi, right? And then, oh my God, and there's that. And, Jimmy Dore, they call him they've got a whole dossier on him, and they've got a whole dossier on RBN, Revolutionary Blackout Network. They've got a whole dossier on them. They got a whole dossier on everybody who does what I do. Look, they got Richard Medhurst. They've hit him with all kinds of stuff. And I'm not even going to repeat. And that's the thing. Like, I don't even want to go into too much detail, because there may be some people, if I say, well, this person's accused of this and this person's accused of that. If I do that, then people are going to be like, oh, see, Caleb repeated the allegations against you. So I'm trying not to do that. But so I guess do the research. Anyone who says what I say immediately gets a label thrown on them. Right? And let me add, and I have gotten apology messages. I have gotten apologies from people who wrote that against me. I have gotten people that apologized. There are tweets I have screenshotted where people who wrote that said, quote, "We lied." They said, quote, "We lied." I have screenshots of people who signed that document admitting they lied. I literally have screenshots of people saying that they admitted that they lied. Right? I have other screenshots of people directly reaching out to me and apologizing to me, admitting they were wrong to put that document out there. So, and then I have another screenshot of somebody else who signed it, admitting that they had no allegation against me. They just signed it to stay friends with somebody else. So at this point, that whole thing is completely debunked as far as I'm concerned. But does that matter? No. Until the day I die, they're still going to be talking about this, because that's how the internet works. And that's how this stuff works. And you'll notice Vosh on his streams can openly advocate pedophilia. Vosh's friends have come forward and said he admits to looking at child porn. And that's, he's Vosh, right? That's not true. And he can go on Young Turks and everyone's fine with it. Cancel culture is selective. It's very, very selective. They go after some people and they don't go after other people. That's just how this works. And because I do this work, I have been targeted. And that's the reality of the situation. Did I make some mistakes? Yeah, I made a whole video on this. And if you want to see the video, go see the video. But I'm talking about myself here. I'm not here to talk about Nick Brana, right? I have some thoughts on the case, but I don't want to get anything wrong. And I'm not here to repeat allegations against my friend Nick, but I looked into it. He didn't do anything. And that this is how this shit works. And I am all the people who quit CPI because of that. See ya. You know what I mean? Because, good riddance. Because if you can't deal with this, it's only going to get worse. Right? I'm sorry, but it's like the more effective we become as an organization, the more people who join us, the more they're going to hit us with this kind of thing. This is what they do. Okay? And, this is what they do. And we live in an age where anyone can just write anything on the internet, where there are a lot of people. Well, I don't want to say anything more. We live in an age where anyone can write anything on the internet, where people love to exaggerate stuff and create drama. And so whatever, you know what I mean? And I knew that well, I don't even want to say anything more about this, right? It's just not appropriate for me. I made my video. You want to go watch my video? It's got 16,000 views, me giving my side of the story on this. You want to go watch my video, and there's a bunch of people who've responded to my video and they lied about it, right? And they'll show me saying what I said, and they'll say, "See, he's saying it's all," and I'm like, "That's not what I said," And there's all these people that like they don't want you to actually watch the video. So they show it on their stream, and I'll say something, and then they'll stop it and say, what he's saying is the opposite of something I didn't say, and you shouldn't believe him. He's a liar. Next. Yeah, I mean, and so it's just like, it's like these people know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And, I'm still here, and a lot of people like me, and a lot of people support me. And the people who put that out are losers. Okay. They're losers. They're losers, and they've been losers for years. Okay. Not even saying their names, because no one else is ever going to say their names. No one cares about them. They're losers. And I tried to give these people an opportunity. I was begging them to speak more and write more. And I was their opportunity to actually go somewhere in this world. And if you look at all the things these people did and the things that these people have achieved, all the big talks they've given, all the big appearances they've had, they all came from me. Without me, these people would be even more losers than they already are. And a lot of their complaints against me are just, Caleb made us do stuff. It's like, I'm done with that. I will never make anyone do anything ever again. Well, first of all, I don't have the power to make anyone do anything. All right. So even that is pathetic. I mean, if you didn't want to do something, don't do it. Right. And I didn't make anyone. I didn't hold a gun. I don't have any guns. I never held a gun to anyone's head. I didn't make anyone do anything. But it's, Caleb was always making us do stuff and trying to get us to do stuff, and it was mean. It was annoying. It's like, God damn it. You know what I mean? Like, grow up. You know what I mean? That's why no more chasing after people. If people want to be losers, you just got to let them be losers. I can't save anybody. I can't save anybody. I cannot save anyone. I am just here to do what I can do. And if you want to, I want people in the Center for Political Innovation to become more well-known, to give speeches. I want to give opportunities to people. I am here to support people and lift them up and lift up their voices. And I want to help you. If you are like me and you want to get out there and do stuff and get your message out there and give speeches and write books and write articles, I want to help you do it. That's what I'm here for. I am here to help you flourish into being the great revolutionary that I think you can be. That's what I'm here. Exactly. You can't fix stupid. That's what I want to do. But if you can't, I'm not gonna try to save people who don't want to be saved. You know what I mean? It's funny. And it's like you say you're dealing with children. Well, actually, that's funny. Like, you mean people that act like children. But see, someone's going to take that and say they were all underage, which I've seen, which is ridiculous. They were all adults. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And we probably shouldn't have even gone there, but we did, but whatever. All right. Next question. All right. Gaddafi was financing infrastructure to unite all of Africa. That is correct. And my understanding is that Gaddafi was actually trying to create an African currency that was only for the African continent. And that Gaddafi, he was the head of the African Union. He was doing a lot to improve life on the African continent. That's really, really true. What are the structural advantages of Russian capitalism to overcome the boom-bust cycle overproduction? Here's the thing, right? You can't call Russia fully capitalist for this reason. Capitalism is not income inequality. Capitalism is not some people having more than other people. Capitalism isn't even unemployment existing. Capitalism is production organized according to profit. That's what capitalism is. And Russia's economy, they export oil and gas, and that oil and gas is state-owned, and they sell it off. And their main business partners are socialist countries. Their main business partner is China, a socialist country. They're also very close to Venezuela, very close to Nicaragua, very close to Cuba. They're also very close to Vietnam. They're very close to Belarus, so much so that Belarus is thinking of joining Russia. So it's like, okay, has Russia, like, did they have another socialist revolution and reinstitute, the Communist Party? Or no, but their economy is heavily state controlled, and their main business partners are all communist countries. So you can't really say that Russia has regular capitalism. There are capitalists in Russia, just like there are in China, but there's capitalists in Russia who are billionaires and wealthy, and a lot of the Russian economy does function according to profit, and the state-run industries still kind of facilitate the wealthy capitalist class that's there, but you can't call Russia fully capitalism. Russia is like a very, very extended Bonapartism, and it's a pro-socialist Bonapartism that is aligned with socialist countries, and it's a Bonapartism that's built on the state apparatus that was created by socialism largely, and the economic apparatus that was created by socialism. So Russia is not regular capitalism by any means, and the market logic doesn't apply, and there you go. All right. Show all the books that I have on post-91 Russia. I'm not going to show you all the books that I have on post-1991 Russia, because some of the books I have, I don't endorse. There are a lot of books I have on post-1991 Russia that I don't politically agree with, and I don't want to show them on here. I don't want to advertise them because they say things about Putin and about Russia that aren't true. So I'm not going to advertise every book I have on post-1991 Russia, but I'll show you a few of them. All right. Europe since 1989, Philip Fair. Shock Doctrine, Naomi Klein. Perestroika by Mike Davidow. Perestroika, The Complete Collapse of Revisionism by Harpal Brar. What else? Genocide, Russia and the New World Order by Sergei Glaziev. The Anatomy of Russian Capitalism by Stanislav Menshikov. Putin versus Putin by Alexander Dugin. What else do I have on post-Soviet Russia that I want to show? I don't want to show every book I've got here, but I will show some of them. Oh, Youth Politics in Putin's Russia by Julie Hemant. That was a good book. I learned a lot about the Russian youth programs they've got. What else do I have? Oh, well, this is about post-Soviet Russia. Very anti. This is The Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski. It's all about the fall of the Soviet Union and the U.S. imperial strategy for maintaining control of Eurasia. I've got Foundations of Eurasianism, Volume 1. Yeah, The Foundations of Eurasianism. Okay. What else we got? What else? We're looking at on post-Soviet Russia. All right, post-Soviet Russia. Okay, we're looking for books on post-Soviet Russia. There's a few that I have that I don't have like within arm's length. Socialism Betrayed by Roger Kieran and Thomas Kenny. Heroic Struggle, Bitter Defeat. I forget who wrote that one. Perestroika by Sam Marcy. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of books I just named there. Shit. Any others? Just looking down here. He's asking books about post-Soviet Russia, right? And there's a few other books that I've got that I don't want to highlight because I don't think that they're, most of what you buy in the United States. There you go. Power to the books. Power to the books. One thing I want to say about Surfing USA, this clown, he hates books. Books trigger him. It's weird. I don't sell t-shirts. I've never had merch. I've meant to, but I've just never gotten my shit together enough to have t-shirts to sell or whatever. But like, that's their main talking point they have against like Jimmy Dore. Like, he sells t-shirts. He's clearly trying to make money. He's a grifter. And it's like, come on, and then they sell t-shirts too. And Young Turks has t-shirts. And it's just like, come on. Right. But, I don't have any merch. I don't have any t-shirts, but I do have my books. And so in all of the hit pieces Surfing USA does, it's like, he's selling books. There's a book table at his event. He clearly just wants to make money. Right? That's like, oh my God, books. And so then in his latest video, I kid you not, he's showing a video with me sitting in this spot. And he's saying, well, clearly Caleb is showing off about how many books he has. I'm like, I'm not showing off. This is just a good spot to sit in. It's like, clearly he's trying to impress us all. That dude, he's really triggered by books. He's really, really triggered by books. Surfing USA, I mean, it's just like books really get under his skin, He would have hit me for selling t-shirts, except I don't sell t-shirts. So you have to get on me for selling my books, right? I should just be like giving them away or something, right? But this is my favorite, right? He's triggered by books. We all know what that means, right? Who else was triggered by books? Who else was triggered by books? Uh-oh. I'm about to show you the truth about Surfing USA. Who else was triggered by books? Who else was triggered by books, folks? Who else was triggered by books? Who else was triggered by books? Do you know what I'm about to do? I'm going to do it. I'm going to have to show on screen to let you all know who else was triggered by books. Surfing USA, we clearly know, we know what you are. We know what you are, Surfing USA, because clearly he hates books so much. Who else hated books? Who else hated books? There you have it. There you have it, folks. Surfing USA. He's fash. He's clearly, that's clearly what's going on. He hates books because, we all know what he is. So there you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. All righty. Just thought I'd have fun with that. Just thought I'd have some fun with that. All right. What's the name of the book you mentioned in the past about uniting your co-workers? I work at UPS, trying to get my co-workers to make demands in an upcoming contract. I'm not sure what book you are referring to. I've always said that Labor's Untold Story is a good book. Labor's Untold Story. It's about the struggle to build the labor unions, the industrial unions in this country, the founding of the labor unions. That's a really good book about labor militancy. And my best, I have like zero trade union experience. I've never been a member of a labor union. Many times I've walked the picket lines. I walked the picket lines with my mom when I was in 4th grade when she was on strike. And I support labor unions. I've done a lot of activism in the past, supporting labor unions, supporting, striking workers, walking the picket lines, but I've never been in a union. I have very little experience with trade union democracy and the procedure and Robert's Rules of Order. And so I really don't have the expertise to throw at you. I'll just be honest. I've done anti-war activism. I've done activism against police brutality. I do a lot of anti-imperialism, and I'm mainly, my main thing is I do agitation and I put out literature and stuff. But there you go. There you go. I wish I could be more helpful, but I'm glad you're working with your coworkers. And I would encourage you, I always, before I do any stream or anything, I always try to think, how could I explain this to my coworkers? Because if you can't explain it to them, you don't really understand it, right? When people start talking in leftist jargon, they don't really know what they're talking about. So there you go. There you go. All right. is there an analog to cancel culture in the Soviet Union? Well, sure. Yeah, it was called the secret police. And, if you were thought to be anti-communist, if you were thought to be working against the socialist system, the secret police took you away in the middle of the night. That wasn't good. But that was a result of the circumstances they were in. They were surrounded. They were invaded by 15 different countries after the Russian Revolution. They lost 27 million people in the Second World War. And, they were building socialism surrounded and under attack by Western imperialism, and they achieved real miracles, but it was a very authoritarian society. And there's no reason to deny that. And that wasn't a good thing. That was a weakness of the Soviet Union. The fact that they had that heavy-handed state repression where people that were dissidents got arrested and put in prison for disagreeing with the government, that wasn't good. Shouldn't have been the situation, right? I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in freedom of assembly. But I also recognize that countries have different situations and different circumstances, and that the Soviet Union, they were in circumstances that, that led to great authoritarianism. I would like to see a socialist society blossom that is so open and prosperous that there's no need for anything like that. I would like to see us get to full communism, a stateless, classless world in which there is no need for any coercion or any social hierarchy. People can just do what they want to do. But I know that when a country is surrounded and building itself up from poverty, like the Soviet Union was, they're not in that situation. But yeah, let's be real. And that also the Soviet Union's, state repression, it may have been necessary at one point, the 20s and 30s maybe, but by the 60s and 70s, it hurt the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union would have been a much stronger country if they had open debate. But because they had developed this culture of authoritarian repression, that made it so the fall of the Soviet Union, they couldn't adjust their system, and you couldn't have open debate, and you didn't know where everyone stood, and that ultimately they collapsed, right? That the authoritarian nature of the Soviet Union that developed, it developed as a result of conditions, but it ultimately hurt the Soviet Union. So there you go. Someone said that the cancel culture that in their future society is like banishment in feudal times. Basically, that's what they want. They want basically everyone who disagrees to be forced off the grid. That's what they want. It's called cancel culture, and it's really toxic, and we're seeing it now. And they play this game where where everyone is being told to cut off ties to a relative. It's like, and this is like, it's wild. Like my family, this isn't an issue. They would have all like canceled me a long time ago. I talk to relatives here and there, but it's like, but a lot of people like, it's, well, your cousin just posted this racist meme, cut him off, denounce him. It's awful. It's awful. Families are torn apart over this stuff. It's awful. So there we go. Is this why they want to implement a global digital currency to control us? Well, for a long time, law enforcement has wanted to implement, and the IRS too, have wanted to implement only digital currencies because cash is untraceable. Physical cash is very hard to trace, and that's just a fact. And, physical cash is much for money laundering. It's much less traceable, etc. And there's long been a push from law enforcement and the tax enforcement and the global banking institutions make all currency digital. There's a problem with that. Is what if there's a computer glitch and you lose all your money? There's that, right? If there's no physical currency. So there's that. The other problem with that, is that there is no secret transactions. It kind of abolishes your right to privacy. You pay for something in cash, no one will ever know what you did with your cash, right? But it abolishes your right to privacy. So there you go. All right. Military industrial complex remain the bad guys. Veterans got ate up just like the rest of us. I agree. Right now, the military industrial complex is bad. But I'm telling you, as the crisis escalates, I believe that the faction within the Pentagon that is becoming more and more anti-war and seeing that their economic interest does not lie with the big monopolies is going to expand. But these things take time, and you're right. And right now, the military-industrial complex is playing a mostly negative role, but we're seeing weird things happen, like Tulsi Gabbard, right? All right. All righty. Okay. And someone said, reach out to the military, not the military industrial complex. Yeah, well, we have to reach out to the broad masses of people. And a lot of those folks are in the military, and there's a lot of anti-war folks in the military. And this attitude that we're against the military, we're against anyone who's in the military, that's got to be gotten rid of. We're against what the military does. That's what we're against, right? We're against what the military does, but the people in the military we should be friends with. And if there's people that are high-ranking military people that, like McGregor, like Tulsi Gabbard, that are anti-war, we should be friendly to them too. But yeah, I mean, the military-industrial complex right now plays a very negative role. But I believe that as the economy progresses, the lower-level capitalists that are tied into it are going to realize that their economic interest is not with the degrowthers at the top. All right. How to explain the is there any anarchist YouTuber that didn't call you nuts? All right, writing it down. So the next super chat we've got here is how to explain the problems of liberalism to a liberal. Well, what do you mean by liberalism? Do you mean liberalism as in the belief in the individual above all else, the ideology of liberalism? Or are you referring to liberals like Democrats? Because, I guess that's what you mean. But if a liberal generally means someone who doesn't believe in everything, they believe that there's truth on all sides, everything's a matter of opinion, they don't have firm belief, and they view firm belief as a form of totalitarianism. They celebrate individualism. That's generally what liberalism believes. And my argument to liberals is to say, look, beliefs hold civilization together. Beliefs are what inspire people to do great things, and that every liberal has something that they fundamentally believe in. There's some concept that they fundamentally believe in. And then you have to show them that, okay, well, if this concept is true, why is it, and I would try to delve that route with them, find out what they really do believe. They believe everything's a scam. They're an atheist. They don't believe in religion, and all that. But there's got to be something that they believe in, some concept, something they're loyal to. Find that and get them to talk about that, and bond with them about that, and get them to explore something that they truly believe in, and find the illiberal side of their personality. I believe everyone has an illiberal side of their personality. Everyone believes in something. Liberalism is the idea you shouldn't believe in anything. Well, everybody has something they believe in, maybe something very small, and maybe just, yeah, right. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, there you go. Explain neoliberalism. Did it replace capitalism? Well, neoliberalism is a form of capitalism. Neoliberalism is the belief that the economy should be heavily unregulated, and the only role of the state is facilitating the markets. Neoliberalism is the economic theories of Milton Friedman, Alan Greenspan. It comes out of the Austrian school and the Chicago School of Economics, the Maupin Society, Friedrich von Hayek. Read Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. Neoliberalism is a form of capitalism. It is the belief that the market always solves the problems. It's the belief most capitalism has a state sector, right? You have the welfare state, you have roads that facilitate the market, you have government services. Neoliberalism is the idea that it's always better if a private company does it, and it's questioning. There's some things that are just taken for granted, like roads, right? I mean, roads are from the government, right? The post office, it's actually in the Constitution that the federal government will maintain a post office. Well, now there is a push to privatize the post office. There's a push to, to say, hey, why don't we just use FedEx, and why don't we use UPS? And that's neoliberalism, right? Private military contractors, prisons for profits, charter schools. There's this idea that things that we always, like public schools, it's always assumed public schools are going to be public. Well, neoliberalism invented charter schools for profit. Right. And that's neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is the idea it's always better. It's always better when a private company does it, and starting to question things that were always assumed to be government functions under capitalism, even by Adam Smith and others. This person says, I am an atheist. How can I tap into America's Christian culture and how can I be honest? Well, you need to read. And again, this is stereotypical, right? This is, maybe I do this a little bit. We talk about books a lot on here, and I know some people don't like to read. So please, I'm not trying to book shame you, but, I would recommend Foundations of Christianity by Karl Kautsky. Karl Kautsky was an atheist. He was a Marxist atheist, but he wrote this book about Christianity and how he saw it fitting in with Marxism, about Christianity as an expression of the Roman proletariat. And it's a really good book. It's a really, really good book. And it says a lot of very, very true things. If you're an atheist and a Marxist, but you want to relate to Christians, I would start out with that book and that understanding of the class nature of Christianity, how Christianity represented the interests of the proletariat within the Roman Empire. That would be the first step, I think. The next step was understanding things like compassion, things like kindness, things that you can find in the Bible that don't go along with the free market, neoliberal, virtue of selfishness way of seeing things, and relate to that. I don't think that's disingenuous at all, right? Maybe you don't literally believe in the Christian in the Christian spiritual beliefs, but you accept that there are values there that you can relate to as a person, and that's something I think you can do. There's no reason to pretend to be something you're not. Right? But you can also relate to things. Are you familiar with Michael Collins Piper's view of the JFK assassination? I am not. I have not read that. I don't know what Michael Collins Piper says about the JFK assassination, so I'll have to read on that. Is the book you're talking about the one you started writing on the New Left? No, this is a new book, a new project, but it draws heavily from that manuscript. I've been using a lot of the research I did for the book on the synthetic left for this upcoming book. So there you go. What is your take on Stephen Kotkin's books about Stalin? What is Stephen Kotkin's books about Stalin? What is that? Like, let me look it up. Like, I mean, generally, if you want to read books about Stalin, if you want books that are, I would read Court of the Red Tsar. I would read, isn't Stephen Kotkin like that insane anti-communist? Right. So, yeah, that's Stephen Kotkin's an extreme anti-communist nut. So I have a feeling, I've read there's a lot of Stalin biographies out there, and, a lot of them are just rumors. And, when it comes to books about Stalin, I would recommend Grover Furr. I would also recommend Stephen Sebag Montefiore. Right. Stephen Sebag Montefiore. He wrote, The Court of the Red Tsar, and he wrote Young Stalin. I would recommend those. Books. I would also recommend Arch Getty. I believe Arch Getty is pretty good. Arch Getty is another historian. Let me Google that for you. Arch Getty. He wrote some good stuff about Stalin also. Arch Getty. He's a historian at UCLA. And he wrote some good stuff about Stalin as well. So there you go. That's who I would recommend. Okay. People's Republic of Walmart. Okay. And there's one other one. Okay. All righty. Okay. So we're just continuing with the super chats here. That's great. Keep it coming, right? I'm answering questions. So there we go. Is there an anarchist on YouTube that didn't call you a Nazi? Brent Langel. He's my friend. We don't agree on a lot of things, but Brent Langel, the anarchist playwright, he's the author of the comic book about the Spanish anarchist Durruti. He's my friend. We go back to Occupy Wall Street. We were both in the courtroom supporting Cecily McMillan. We're pals, and I like him. He likes me. And, he's never called me a Nazi, and he knows I'm not a Nazi because he knows me, and he's a Buddhist, and we respect each other. And he's kind of a quirky guy. He's into martial arts and stuff like that. He's got a kid. He's a cool dude. I like him. He doesn't agree with me on a lot of things, but there you go. All right. Have you read The People's Republic of Walmart? I read I skimmed it a long time ago. Essentially, the argument that book makes is a very good argument, which is that Walmart is this super centralized corporation that manages to get everything done. And it debunks this standard argument that you hear against communism, which is there's a name for it. The libertarians have a name for it. It's that you can't centrally plan everything. It's just too complicated. To centrally plan everything is just too complicated. You can't have socialism because the economy is just too intricate and complicated. And People's Republic of Walmart is a debunking of that argument, showing that Walmart is this huge corporation, millions of people working for it, millions of stores all around the world, but they, with computers and all of that, they manage to centrally plan everything. They centrally plan it to make their own profits, right? It's operated for profit, but it's still planned, right? It's just planned to make their profits, but it's planned very centrally, this huge corporation, and that you could very easily centrally plan an economy in our time, very easily, right? With the technology. If you look at what Walmart is capable of doing to coordinate their effort to maximize profits, that could very easily be done by the state sector. So the idea that central planning, that no human could possibly centrally plan an economy because it's just too complicated, that's just a bullshit argument, right? And that's the point that the People's Republic of Walmart shows. It shows that Walmart functions a lot like the Soviet Union's centrally planned economy. It just does it to maximize profits for the shareholders. So there you go. And I think that's a very good argument. And it also understands what socialism is, right? Because socialism is the elimination of the anarchy of production. It's central planning, but not for profit. So there you go. There you go. There you go. Communists to write in 2024. Communists to write in 2024. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the People's Party is going to run some kind of campaign, aren't they? I mean, aren't they considering a presidential campaign for Jimmy Dore or somebody? And then, there's obviously going to be different socialist and communist groups that run candidates. So there you go. There you go, folks. All right. I'm exhausted. I got up early to record the podcast with comrades Jyoti and Harpal, and I'm exhausted, but I really enjoyed talking to all of you here tonight. I struggle to remain optimistic. I'm tired tonight, but this is going to be a great year for the city building tendency and for the work that we're doing. I'm very excited. Mark your calendars for March 25th. More details soon. And I am exhausted, and I'm going to have to say goodnight for now. So, but until then, I will pull up our closing music. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.